world is waking up to the threat of climate change. Every day its impacts are clear. Forest fires, worsening hurricanes, heat waves, droughts, and famines. Climate change threatens the constantly improving global quality of life. Climate change threatens what we all hold dear: economic security, health, safety, life. But we are waking up. Millions of people, old and young, from across the globe, dare to dream of a better world. A world without these terrible, worsening impacts of the climate crisis. And yet, the solution proposed to get us there, net zero, is simply inadequate.
Net zero involves us stopping putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or at least balancing the carbon dioxide we put in with removals. It stops us making the crisis worse, which is a necessary first step to a better future. But it's not enough. Net zero leaves us with the climate impacts we all feel today. And so, no matter how quickly we reach it, it does not reverse the significant damages and suffering we will cause. According to the IPCC, net zero will leave climate impacts for today for centuries to millennia to come. That is not a brighter future. That is unacceptable.
So, at Worldward, we champion a different approach, a better approach, and a more hopeful approach. That approach is climate restoration. Not only do we need to achieve net zero, but we need to remove as much CO2 from the atmosphere as possible, helping to not just halt the worsening of, but to reverse the climate crisis. Net zero just stops the crisis getting worse. We need to go beyond net zero to make it better. Imagine the climate like a bathtub. We need to switch off the taps, stop emitting. That's net zero. But this bathtub is overflowing. To make more room, we need to open the plug and reduce the water level. That's removal. Once we've done both, that's climate restoration.
How to do these removals? There are many ways to do so, from utilizing the power of ecosystems or the natural carbon removal tendencies of rock, from building machines to scrub CO2 from the air or making concrete net negative. Will all of these technique humanity thinks of work? No. Some will work brilliantly at large scales, others at small scales, and others too costly and dangerous to deploy. But we need to invest in these techniques and research them to discover which work and which don't, and then scale them up. Worldward doesn't advocate for any specific technique, but that doesn't stop the fact we need to remove gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere.
A thermometer is neither left wing or right wing. So, Worldward is politically diverse. Restoration is neither a left wing goal or a right wing one, just as net zero isn't. Restoration is merely an acceptance of the scope of the climate crisis and a commitment to combat it. As such, there will be a right-wing solution and left-wing solution to it. And the restoration movement needs all perspective within it.
Climate change is a global threat, and so Worldward is a global organization, helping to grow a global movement. We have volunteers from every continent on Earth, and this diversity is our strength. The youth of the world cry for a solution to this climate crisis. We believe restoration to be that solution.
Worldward aims to catalyze the acceptance of climate restoration worldwide. We campaign to companies and politicians to take meaningful action towards climate restoration, and we educate on the severity of the climate crisis and how to solve it. But we need all the help that we can get. We need activists to campaign on it, politicians to legislate on it, and companies to act on it. And finally, the whole world to call on their leaders and carry it out.
Without climate restoration, there is no climate justice. With the terrible impact of climate change already locked in place, without climate restoration, there is no solution to the climate crisis. Therefore, we urge every activist, every investor, every company, every politician, every government, and every person take restoration seriously. The world calls out for a safer climate and a better future. Climate restoration is the way to get there. It's time for climate restoration.
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 It's time for climate restoration.